This meeting of the Historical and Architectural Review Board has come to order. Our agenda for this evening on May 3rd will be as follows. We will have a call to order. We will have the approval of the agenda, the Pledge of Allegiance, approval of minutes from March 1st, 2021. Any announcements? Old business, which is an update on state small matching grant opportunity for a historic resources survey. Any new business? Topics for members for discussion, and then we'll adjourn the meeting and go into the Planning and Zoning Board meeting. Any comments? Is there a motion to approve the agenda? We have a motion and a second for the agenda. Is there any discussion on the agenda? If not, we will move to public comments on the agenda. Up on your screen, for those of you who are participating by Zoom, you will see the information to call into the meeting. Shortly. If you have comments on the agenda, it will tell you where to call in. Once you get into the meeting, you will press the star button to raise your hand. A star 9 to raise your hand. And we will let you know, we will let you into the meeting and you will be able to comment on the agenda. And since Zoom is behind the meeting that is live, we will give our citizens time to call in and comment if they so wish. 0. There's no public comment. Correct. All in favor of the agenda, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And the motion passes 4-0. Which would be a good way for me to indicate that board member Linda Woodcock. Oh yeah, 5-0 because there are 7 of us. We are missing members Linda Woodcock and Joe. His last name is Almonte.
Joe called this afternoon. He asked me to give everybody his apologies for not being able to make it. He's traveling.
So now we will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from March 1st, 2021. Does anyone have any comments? Is there a motion for approval? We have a motion to approve from board member Urched. Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. Did the board members have any comments on the March 1st minutes? We will move to public comment. Once again, up on your screen, we will show you the number to call in. Zero people calling in. There are 0 public comments. Any comments from the board? I'm going to get good at baseball signs by the end of this meeting, apparently. All in favor of the minutes for March 1st, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And the motion passes 5-0. Are there any announcements? Seeing none, we will now move to old business, which is the update on our state small matching grant opportunity for historic resources survey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is just a quick report to give you an update on where we are, just on what kind of funding there is available. On the next slide gives you the overall picture of what's going on. The next slide would be great. Thank you. Essentially, that the state of Florida is accepting applications for their small matching grant and aid assistance. And those are all due by June 1st. And that's an opportunity to be able to get funding up to $50,000 for project types that are like we're looking at the survey. This is the kind of funding that we got last time for the 2011 survey of historical resources in the city. The next slide gives you a little bit more information, that just to note that the state for this grant cycle has a couple of priorities, and that is that communities that are underrepresented in historic preservation and also digital access to historical documents and information are their priorities, but they will accept and are accepting applications of all kinds of projects that fit in the other categories. As I said, the maximum award, 50,000. They do have a pot of money that gets set aside for certified local governments, of which Newberry is one. And those kinds of grants are available for survey, planning, and National Register nominations. And our project would, of course, be updating our 2011 Historical Resources Survey that you had instructed us to pursue, looking at different kinds of funding. And that would fall under their project type for survey projects. And this is what we did to identify and document the different kinds of historical resources that we have, whether they're inside the district or outside the district, they can be included as contributing on our landmark survey. And essentially, that's the information. I just want to let you know that we are going to go forward. The next slide just shows that if you have any questions, I'm happy to try to answer them, just so you know that we'll be working toward submitting to see if we can get some funding to help get an update for that survey.
Does the board have any questions? Seeing none, that was just an update, correct? We don't.
Correct.
no
That's just
action needed
a
on our part.
presentation, just information, just an informational update.
Thank you very much. Oh, that's right. No. So seeing as there are no questions from the board, we'll move on to new business. Do we have any new business? Seeing none, we'll move to topics from members for discussion. Board Member Johnson, Board Member Conrad, Mayor Marlowe. I have none. Mayor, Board Member Chad.
Slow down. I'm not having it.
Board Member Lloyd. And with that, the Historic Architectural Review Board is adjourned, and we will be moving on to the Planning and Zoning in a few minutes. This meeting of the City of Newberry Planning and Zoning Board is now called to order. Our agenda will be as follows, and it's long, I apologize. We'll have a call to order, approval of the agenda, approval of minutes from March 1st, 2021 and March 15th, 2021. Announcements, which we have the wastewater treatment facility capacity, old business, new business, which we have several items under. Number 4, amending the Lexington Station mixed-use development and renaming the development as Avalon Woods. 5, changing previously annexed properties future land use map classification from Alachua County Rural Agriculture to City of Newberry Agriculture. Number 6, rezoning previously annexed property from Alachua County Rural Agriculture to City of Newberry Agriculture. Item number 7, changing previously annexed properties future land use map classification from Alachua County Rural Agriculture to City of Newberry Agriculture, which is also number 8 and 9 and 10. And then we will have topics from members for discussion, and then we will adjourn. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda? I have a motion and second. Is there any discussion from the members on the agenda? Yes, sir.
I have a problem with this agenda. We have 6 items that are changing land use from city from county agriculture to city agriculture. And this is for you. 104 pages front and back. And probably an hour or so of our time. 5 volunteers. And this is redundant. It's brainer. Is there any way that we can batch these things?
Should I start over again?
Start all over again.
I'm back. Okay. So who's got my soapbox? I'm getting back up on it again. So we've got 6 items that are simple changes of land use, not changes of land, just changes of name from county agriculture to city agriculture. There is 104 pages front and back dedicated to this administrative task of changing names from one to another. No substantial changes, nothing the board has to think about. It's mind numbing to sit through all of that or read through any of it. And it seems like a lot of staff time goes into preparing all these documents. Is there any way the attorneys can look at this process and figure out how we can batch them or put them on the consent agenda or do something that we can staff can look at them and say, if there's nothing here that needs the staff's or that needs the board's attention, that let's just approve them in a consent agenda style and save ourselves a little time. Staff has been here since this morning. We're going to be late at night, wading through these things, going through quasi judicial procedures over and over and over again, 6 times, the same things, the same verbiage. I just, I looked at, I'm going to hear the first item and probably walk out of the meeting because I just, it's too much. We've got so many annexations. Do you think there's something you can do to help us, Scott?
Really, I think, Bill, the fix would be probably legislative. You know, perhaps something could be done in the legislature to say, because you're exactly right, this is ministerial.
Tallahassee legislature.
Correct, Tallahassee.
Wasn't there a time when we considered it legislative and we didn't do all the?
There was a time actually when it was legislative. We didn't have to do quasi judicial, but then came the Snyder case, and then the legislative regime after that, which said that you have to run each one of these independently, and we have to exercise our zoning authority over the properties, and that's how we gain our zoning code over these particular properties. So you're absolutely right. It's ministerial, administrative, it's the same thing over and over. Now, I do think this evening, as long as nobody else is coming into the room, as long as we don't have new people that are joining us on the Zoom hearing, I don't think that our chair has to go over the procedure over and over and over. It's because it is so ministerial. So I think we can I think we can go through these very quickly. If none of the board members say, I've got a question about this, or, there's, as you said, you go through, it's very straightforward, very plain. There's not a real need for in-depth analysis by staff's time to go through each one of these ag to ag. And I think we can
How
abbreviate.
about the
that one.
Zoom waiting 30 seconds at every couple points in the way when there's nobody even on Zoom?
I
Can we
think
cut that part of it out?
I think if we don't see anybody joining the Zoom, in addition, I think the delay is perhaps maybe not 30 seconds, but I think we have a little bit of delay to wait to see if somebody joins in. But as long as those things are happening, I think that we can go through it pretty quickly. I think, and that's the only thing right now that we can do. When I referenced a legislative fix, I think that perhaps we could talk to our local legislative delegation and say, hey, on these kind of things, if it's the same zoning code from county to city, perhaps unless there's some objection by the property owner or an interested party, perhaps we could have some sort of a automatic fix.
It's going to take us more time to do that than we're going to save.
I think that generally speaking, when we go to public comments, you guys have sat up here, we have very little public comment. I just want to clarify though, that the 30 seconds is for the folks on YouTube. The people on Zoom, we can see if you're there, we can see if nobody's there. What we've advertised is that if you're watching it on YouTube and we don't really know if you're watching it on YouTube or not, there's the phone number for you to call in. So not advocating one way or the other. I think that, very little risk of going wrong. Thank you so much. And if we do go wrong, all that has to happen is we come back and we redo that quasi judicial procedure. We take the vote over again. So, I've heard board member Conrad make this comment. I've made this comment. I've heard, various members at different points saying a lot of this just seems so tedious. There's got to be a
with
way.
6 items
Yeah.
and Zoom and, we're going to be here
Just adds
hours
and
into
adds
the
and adds.
night doing something that should be a rubber stamp.
All this is copy and paste anyways.
Well, we'll just have to test the chair's ability to speed read, right? That's just, let's
No
do
pressure,
it.
Jessica, move.
I was a debater. You'd be shocked at how fast I could actually speak.
That concludes my comments on the agenda.
Well taken.
So now we do have to go to public comment for the agenda. I apologize. The number will appear on your screen that you can call in if you have comments on the agenda. If you get into the meeting, if you'll press *9 to raise your hand, to let us know you have comments. Once again, this is a reminder that there is not a 30 second, there is a delay between YouTube and the live in-person meeting. Is there anyone calling in? Okay, so all in favor of the agenda?
No,
Roll call vote. Board Member Johnson. Board Member Conrad.
no.
Board Member Urched.
Aye.
Aye, and the motion passes 3-1. Next, the approval of minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review? Okay, so first for the review and approval of the March 1st, 2021 minutes. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second? We have a motion and a second. Is there any comment on the minutes for March 1st? And we're going to go to public comment.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
while we're given those 30 seconds, I would just say that since the fix is a redo, we could lump these quasi judicials into the ones that have to do with each other, make the motion. Nobody complains the next 12 months, then we're free and clear. Just throwing that out there as a possibility.
Jordan, say it again so I can understand.
If we lumped all of these quasi judicials, like 2 or 3 of them, they just kind of go together, we could do them. We could lump them together, take one vote on 3 quasi judicials. The only time anything would happen is if somebody came and complained, and said, no, we'd still go to public comment. We still do the quasi judicial. We would just lump 4 and 5 together, maybe 6, right? And we just run the risk of somebody complaining at some point in time, which I think is a very little risk of doing. And if they did complain, then we would just put it back on an agenda, separate the one out that they complained about, vote again. Just throwing that out there, and that took about 30 seconds.
But measuring twice and cutting once saves a lot more time.
I would suggest not to do that, although I think you're probably going to save minutes. When we get to these, I think take them one by one, get it done. And
We've had previous agendas that we've been able to get through fairly quickly. And I know it's tedious, but I don't think our way of doing it should be if someone complains. I think it should be, we should do it right the first time. Is there any public comment on March 1st? All in favor of the March 1st minutes, say aye. Any opposed? And the March 1st minutes pass 4-0. On to the next item under approval of minutes, review and approval of the March 15th, 2021 minutes. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second? I have a motion and a second. Is there any comments from the board on the March 15th, 2021 minutes? Public comment, we have the sign up. There are 0 public comments on this.
It takes 30 seconds for people to catch up, so.
Okay.
Because we've got 15 seconds left. on 30
Gotcha.
seconds.
All right, so we're going to give people a few more seconds to be able to call in if they have comments on the March 15th, 2021 minutes. We can do that too. And is there still no one, Janine?
They're not coming. We have public,
Okay, good.
but they are not reading it.
March 15 minutes were very exciting. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the March 15th, 2021 minutes pass 4-0. Under announcements, we have the wastewater treatment facility capacity.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the things I was thinking of is I see that this agenda doesn't include a consent agenda. We could add consent to things like meeting minutes on there, and they would all be approved at one time, would be a way to go. And just to point out that and this is an error on our part, but we have announcements twice. It actually should be in a presentation. We kind of not a big deal, just a note. I'm going to present to you, it says wastewater treatment plant facility capacity, and we will speak specifically about the wastewater plant. It's kind of a combination. I'd say it's more geared towards concurrency, where we use it, wastewater treatment plant capacity as an example of how staff monitors concurrency. It's kind of been a concern with first our city commission, and we made this presentation to them a month or so ago, in the community, which is what generated was the impetus for staff putting the presentation together. So it's not a long presentation. I welcome questions mid-presentation. You don't have to wait to the end. If you have a question, just shout it out and we'll slow down a little bit and address it and then move on. So again, it was better named concurrency, but specifically we're going to talk about wastewater treatment plant capacity. And tonight's recommended action is simply to receive the presentation. When we talk about concurrency, planning concurrency, there are 7 categories in our land development regulations and kind of statewide. that we look at. And they're roads, schools, water treatment plant capacity, wastewater treatment plant capacity, stormwater, solid waste, and parks. And generally, the two that a city focuses on are water and wastewater treatment plant capacity. Schools are handled by the school board. Roads generally are handled by the county and the state really diluted its ability. There's not nearly as much emphasis on state roads as there was pre-2008. And stormwater solid waste, we just have currently unlimited capacity. Maybe 30 years from now, it will become a thing for us. Stormwater and park are in our LDRs. We require developments to provide those for themselves. So, and parks, by the way, have an open space. So really, when you're city staff, you're aware of all the others, but water and wastewater treatment is kind of where it's at. And tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about wastewater treatment plant capacity. It's expensive, takes a long time to get there, which is why our biggest focus is there. Wanted to go over a little bit of terminology. And we use the terminology development order quite a bit, and I think we have utilized it a little bit too loosely. So a development order is any order or notice of proposed state or regional governmental agency action, which is or will have effect on granting, denying, granting with conditions, an application for a development permit, and includes the rezoning of a specific parcel. But development order is kind of broad. It really, a lot of the actions that are taken by a board, specific, sometimes this board, but specifically our city commission, fall under the category of development order. And so when we're talking about concurrency, development orders don't trigger a concurrency review. So final development orders do. And so what I mean by that is when we do a land use change or propose a land use change or rezoning, that often there's concern, do we have enough water and wastewater treatment plant capacity? And I think that it is good for us to be aware of that, but that is just an inappropriate time within the life of a development for us to make those types of final determinations. I'll give you an example. Most of the developments that you're dealing with now were approved 2005 to 2008. They've been rezoned. So that would be Legacy, the one near Easton, which was Lexington Station. There's a lot of developments that get zoning, but zoning gives them certain rights, what we call vested rights, that they can develop a certain way. Typically in Newberry, it's residential, but it doesn't say that we have capacity and that they can proceed with development. You can't proceed with development unless you know that we have capacity. And those come from our city commission in the way of a final development order. The final development order is a process that enables land development to proceed, break ground. And for residential development, that's a final plat. So when we do a rezoning and someone says, I want to know if we have water plant capacity, we can answer that question, but it's really not germane because it may be 10 years before they try to plat it and put the first house there, in which case it didn't matter what happened 10 years ago because we can build capacity. It's when you see a final plat for a residential development, or when you see a site and development plan for commercial or non-residential development, that's when we got a note, and that's when concurrency is issued. So an example would be Countryway Town Center. That is ultimately proposed to be about 375 homes. And it began prior to me getting here, so 2013-ish. And at the time, the city may not have had wastewater plant capacity, so they were just finishing up on a new treatment plant. But they're developing that. They're currently in their 5th phase. There's usually 40 or 50 lots per phase. And we've been approving about a phase a year. So whenever that plat comes through and you look at it and say there's 50 homes, we'll ask Jamie, do you have water plant capacity for those 50 homes? Do you have wastewater plant capacity? The answer is yes, then we can recommend approval of the subdivision. If the answer is no, even if they have vested rights, our boards would have their hands tied and should not approve that development until we can demonstrate that we have adequate water and wastewater capacity. So just a couple more thoughts. Vesting is not concurrency. Having vested rights in a certain way means that you have zoning. Doesn't mean that you have the ability to move forward in your development we'll have to make sure that we have available concurrency or capacity at our facilities to do that. When a final development order is approved, concurrency is awarded. And when we track concurrency, those bullet points there are what we look at. Look at the total available capacity at our treatment facilities, how much we're using today, how much we previously allocated, how much is coming with this order, and then we'll calculate if the available capacity at our treatment facilities are sufficient to handle the load that's about to be taken up by the development order that's being considered, or the final plat that's being considered. So an example of how we do this, what we do as a staff to monitor this, I pulled some of the spreadsheets that we're working on. So we look out, this is going into the future. You can see we started at 2021. We also know what's happened in the past. Again, this is one spreadsheet of many. So we calculate that we're going to have some unplanned infill. Someone buys a lot in the downtown area, has water and sewer, and they want to use it. We're planning on 10 a year of those. And we have the County Agriculture and Equestrian Center. We know they're going to take 13 what we call ERUs. That's an equivalent residential unit. So that's a commercial development or non-residential development. We take their total flow and divide it by 250 gallons per day, and that's how many ERUs they would generate. And we know that that's going to come on in two different phases. There's the existing Canterbury phase, and then there's the 5 acres that's going to be the new IFA. So we split that. 6 ERUs come online in 2021, 7 come online in 2022. Countryway Town Center, every one of these, we talk to a developer. So if there's a developer sitting in the room tonight, he probably got a phone call from me or an email from me or both asking these questions. So Countryway Town Center says they're going to pull 35 building permits a year and plan to do that right on until they're through with their development. Oak Park's going to wind down this year. Avalon Woods is, if it's approved, it's going to start slow, and then they're going to start building up over the next few years, and so on and so forth. And then we roll that down at the bottom. And we see that for the past 3 years, we've averaged 97 ERUs a year. And we pull about 120 building permits a year in the city. About 20% of those don't connect our water and sewer system. Those are those rural 5-acre homes, like what I live on. They're connected to a septic tank, and we don't count them for concurrency. But we've been connecting about 100 homes a year to our water and wastewater system. You can see at the bottom of each column how we're rolling that up, and we think that's going to grow moving into the future based on feedback from our developers. So we use these tables, and we use them to develop these graphs. The blue line you see is our treatment plant capacity. So currently our treatment capacity is just a hair under 500,000 gallons per day. It's 499. We're in the process of having that upgraded. The treatment plant will treat more. We just got it rated below that because it helped us out with some staffing. But we're in the process of increasing that to 560,000 gallons per day. So that gives us an extra 60,000 gallons per day. And we estimate in 2025, we'll complete construction and have at least a 1 MGD treatment plant online. Could be bigger. We're in the middle of a facilities plan that will tell us those things. Right now, we have an engineer hired. They're out looking at all this, and they're going to come back and report to staff and the city commission on what we think that capacity should be. So we plot these out, and based on the projections that I showed you on the previous slide, you see the orange line, which depicts what we think our flow rates will be. So in this case, based on the flow projections that I showed you previously, we could run out of capacity in 2024 if we maintain the growth rate that was projected. However, I would tell you that if we back up and look at this slide right here, that going from 100 connections a year up to 216 and then 456 connections in a 4-year period, I think is unrealistic. So while I trust developers to have plans of what they're going to do, my years of experience tell me that growth rates just don't happen that fast. That's a 400% increase, about 100% increase a year. I don't think that any small city can sustain that type of growth rate. I don't think it's possible. So just to let you know, we plotted this. I don't trust it and I don't recommend it to the commission. But if we get to the point where we are at capacity, the next set of plat that comes before this board and then the city commission for consideration, we'll tell them we don't have treatment plant capacity and they're going to have to wait until we put it online. And that's just, I would hope and expect that city commission would take staff's recommendation for denial based upon lack of capacity to heart and not approve anything like that. But it takes, in my opinion, it takes 4 years to build a treatment plant. I'm confident that as long as we don't lose momentum, dilly-dally, that we will comfortably have new treatment plant capacity on in 2025. We looked at the same scenario with other growth rates. We've been growing at 5% for the last 5 years. And 5%, I know Mayor Marlowe tells us all the time, and former Mayor Conrad say all the time, 5% growth rate is unsustainable, it's unhealthy. I don't know that it's unhealthy, but I know that it's pretty high growth rate. Probably, most communities, when they're growing at 2.5%, are feeling like they have a good growth rate. So 5%, I think that's a pretty aggressive growth rate. I take those flow projections and I convert them to a graph, and I show you that at a 5% growth rate, if we bring treatment plant capacity online in 2025 or 2026, we have tons of available capacity. So if we just continue our growth rate right now, we're never going to be concerned that we run out of wastewater treatment plant capacity. So we look at 10% because we want to be conservative. And at a 10% growth rate, we get a curve that still shows we'll make it. And for grins and giggles, we did 20% growth rate. And even at 20, it's tighter, but at a 20% annual growth rate, we would still have treatment plant capacity online in 2026, aggressive growth rate. So we put this together to allay concerns that we were going to run out of treatment plant capacity. One, if we do, we'll advise the commission as we're marching along the way. We'll report to the Planning and Zoning Board and the commission that, hey, we were growing at 100% a year. We are growing at 100% a year, and at that rate, we could run out of capacity. And if we ever do, we will report it whenever someone is submitted a plat and says we want to get platted. We would say we recommend against the commission doing that. Just a brief extra slide about population projections. The blue line shows our growth rate over the last 30 years. I mentioned that we'd grown at 5% in the last 5 years, and that's true. If you look at a 30-year snapshot, we've grown at 10.6% per year for 30 years. And we were just low in 1990. We had a lot of growth between 1990 and 2000, and that's why we are able to still have a 30-year, 10% per year growth rate. And then we projected going forward 30 years because wastewater plants, they last 30 years at least if we're good stewards, and we are. So we look back 30 years, we look forward 30 years, and we selected a growth rate, a 30-year growth rate of 1.5%, 3%, 5%, and there's one in the middle there that's orange. I guess I should have put it out. That's our best guess, which is kind of a hybrid. When our best guess included 3% growth rate for the near future, and then slowing down to 2.5%. That's that orange line there. And you can see those curves that show what our population would look like graphically, and the values show what our population would be if we maintain those growth rates over 30 years. I think one interesting point about that is I hear, I see in social media, we have a lot of conversation about we're growing too fast and we're going to outpace Alachua, we're going to outpace Gainesville. And I'm just telling you, we are 60 years behind Gainesville, and even at a rapid growth rate, we might catch them or catch where they are today in 50 years. But we're, at a fast growth rate 30 years from now, we think we could be at 29,000 people. That's a far cry from, I heard Villages. Villages is permitting 1,000 units a year. They bought 30,000 acres to begin with. Newberry, Western Alachua County is nothing like that. We don't even have those tracts of land available to see a development like that. So again, the purpose of this is to kind of allay some some concerns. It is a fast growth rate. And we're lucky to have a guy like Jamie Jones and a guy like Brian Thomas and Wendy that can keep up with those sorts of things and make sure we don't run out of infrastructure and available capacity. But I want this board to have some confidence that staff is paying attention to it and that we're not going to let us get too far down the road. We may tell you it's getting a little crazy, it's hard, but we're not going to run out of capacity while the team that you currently have is on watch. Yes, sir.
I had a question. Help me to understand, is it the numbers that the builders have given you, the yearly rates that they're telling you they're going to build out show that like in 2020, we got 108 total, 2021, 131. That's like a 20% growth rate.
Correct.
And then 2022, 237. That's like an 80% growth rate. And then we got 2023, 2020, between 2023 and 2024, we go from 280 to 850.
Correct. And
This is like 400%.
well,
But
yes,
yet our planning graph shows 2 to 5% expectation. What's the
No.
difference between what the builders tell us and what we're planning for?
well, there's not. I mean, there's a graph that follows this table. And I would say that the growth rate from 280 to 850 includes bringing 500 units on for Archer. So we're having a discussion with Archer about whether we would do that, but still going from 108 to 280 or 400, that's a high growth rate. But this is the curve that growth rate generates. And I tell you, I'm skeptical, but it could happen. But I'm more comfortable with the growth rate at 5%. Potentially 10%, this is the 5% growth curve. That's what I'm most comfortable with because I know that most professional engineers that do this type of planning work think that 3 is too aggressive. Our consultant tells me that we're going to have to go to the mat against DEP to convince them that 4% is the right number. So I know the world of 30-year planning and what numbers look right. But so this other graph is what developers tell me will happen. I'm not going to call in. I say it's optimistic and I appreciate optimists, but there's not a disconnect. There's a curve that shows what they're proposing. And we're prepared if it happens. We'll report that to our elected boards and, we'll keep up with it. And we'll tell you if we've only got, 20 more lots that we could approve for development as that time comes.
But we don't tell them that until final development order. We have people sitting here that we're going to promise them, give them a promise that's going to make them to move forward, invest money in their project, and then they're going to get millions of dollars into the project when we tell them, looks like we don't have capacity.
We report, there's a conversation that goes on about where we are with our capacity. I've had a conversation with a developer that's sitting in this room and we talk about all of our concurrency about where we are with things and whether they're at risk when they take this development on, when they expend their money. But the big money comes in getting approvals, construction approvals and platting approvals, and oftentimes their projects are contingent. Those contracts to purchase land are contingent upon certain approvals. But they're also professional developers and they understand the rules of the game in Florida when concurrency is awarded. So, we try to do our best to highlight it. But to me, when in 2008, the city of Newberry gave zoning capacity to maybe 4,000 or 5,000 lots, and it doesn't have the treatment plant capacity for that today. Should they not have issued that? Well, I'll give you an example. The city of Alachua, where I previously worked, they gave zoning approval for the Turkey Creek PUD. That was 6,000 units. And at the time, their treatment plant had the capacity for 1,000, but it was a 30-year buildup. And the developer understood that they would need treatment plant capacity upgrades, but you don't want to build a 5 MGD plant 40 years before you need it because you're approving a big development. You're giving zoning rights, you're vesting rights to big developments. Those developers should be made aware and we should have a conversation about it. We just shouldn't make our decisions based on it. We talk about all the time, you want to bring wastewater plant capacity on just in time planning. We want to bring it on right when we need it, because if not, our existing customers are making debt service payments. If we're bringing on just in time, the new development is making the debt service payments, and that's the way our commission intended.
Okay, thanks.
First off, thank you, Brian. Thank you, Brian. Thanks, Mike, and your staff for putting
We
this
look
up. Question on, I guess, on the A slide on tracking concurrency based on projection. I see it's going from there's a 0.31 in there between the 0.50 and 0.19. What is a safe number that you want to be at? Like, as far as an engineering standpoint? Yeah, exactly. What would you, being our city manager, are comfortable with pushing that envelope and not going any further? Like, is there a threshold that you would like us to stay under?
Well, as I've mentioned before, we want to plan for bringing online just in time. And right now, we have about 3 steps to bring a wastewater plant online. The first one is planning. We're undergoing planning now, and that's about a 9-month to a year process. Then we'll do design. That's about another year. And then construction. We plan on construction being, a year to probably closer to 18 months. So as city manager, I want to get through the first 2 phases so that I'm ready to go to construction. And then I want to look out and see, well, how are we doing? And I'd like to have about a year's worth of capacity in reserve when we bring it online in case we have construction delays. But if we finish our design and our growth curves are really low, we've been growing at 2%, and we think we have, 8 years capacity before we need new capacity, I will recommend that now that we have a design in hand, let's just sit on it until we're closer, because we don't want to be paying debt service out of our existing ratepayers. We want to wait for the new development to get there. And I'd say we would break ground 30 months ahead of when we need it. And that would give us 18 months construction and about a 12-month buffer.
All right, thank you.
I just wanted to make the point that this is also why, and I've never asked this question, how many years ago the commission adopted these connection fees, but this is why the connection fees are so important. Those become a central plank in our ability to go out and do the planning and the designing. It's why we can't waive them. It's why we have bonded them. We were saying we're going to collect X amount of money from every house that comes in. And so that every developer, every house they sell pays some portion of their fair share of that growth at the treatment facility. So having these kinds of numbers, and we really had to get, our staff has kept these numbers since they've come in, but we've really had to pull these charts out because of the conversation about the regional treatment facility. So we've had to know, can we help Archer come in? Can we help High Springs? All of those kinds of things. But it's gotten to the point where I cringe when I hear some of the comments on social media, because the hours and hours of work that goes into knowing whether we have capacity, and for someone who just kind of has tuned into the conversation just in that moment on Facebook to say, well, I bet they haven't even thought about whether or not there's sewer capacity or can the roads take it, and clearly you guys sit up here and listen to these presentations. You know how much work is going into it. You understand the difference between county roads and state roads and municipal roads and water treatment plants. So we just have to do a better job of trying to get this information out so that the greater public understands the amount of work. We pay a lot of money to all of these professionals to be able to know that we do have this capacity. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I saw that at the city commission meeting and was like, what? Are we getting that presentation too? So I'm glad we did.
Good presentation.
Okay, so moving on to old business. We have no old business, so we'll move on to new business. This will be the first of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 quasi judicial proceedings. So we'll go ahead and read the procedures for all of them, and we will swear in anyone as they come along. If no one enters into the conversation, I will not read the procedures again, except to be moving us along from one aspect to the next, in order to help speed this process along a little bit. So our process for quasi judicial procedures are as follows. Our city attorney will read the record into the ordinance and explain the rules regarding testimony, primarily that substantial and competent evidence must be met when the board makes a decision. The city attorney will explain the procedure and the order of presentation, or the chair, which I'm doing right now, as a matter of fact. We will have applicant, staff, participants sworn in. The board will disclose any ex parte communications on each of the items separately. Our presentation order will be as follows. There will be a staff overview, which will be a brief introduction. Then the applicant will present their application. There's no time limit on that. The staff will give us their report and recommendations. If there are any third-party interveners, which none have disclosed, that will be their time. Then we'll move to public comment. The applicant may cross-examine, the party interveners may cross-examine, and staff may cross-examine. Then the members of the board, through the chair, may ask questions of the staff, the applicant, party interveners, participants. And final arguments made by the applicant, and then staff, related solely to the evidence and testimony presented at the hearing. The city attorney will advise the board as to the applicable law and factual findings. There will be deliberation, and after deliberations, a vote will be taken. So with that, if the city attorney will read our first item, number 4, into the record.
Happy to do so, Madam Chair. This will be ultimately, after all the presentations, ordinance number 2021-14 LDR 2110, an ordinance of the city of Newberry, Florida, amending development order 20-02 pursuant to an ordinance 2020-21 LDR 2002 of the city of Newberry Land Development Regulations as amended pursuant to an application by the property owner to amend Lexington Station Mixed Use MU Development, renaming said development to Avalon Woods Mixed Use MU Development, providing for development flexibility and amending the maximum permitted residential and non-residential uses on certain lands within the corporate limits of the city of Newberry, Florida. Tax parcels numbers 01874-100-000, tax parcel number 01874-200-000, tax parcel number 01874-001-000, and tax parcel number 01897-000-000, consisting of 196 acres more or less, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date. Madam Chair, when the appropriate time comes, that will be the ordinance to place on the floor for approval, denial, or continue to a date certain in the future.
Thank you so much. If you are here to speak on this item, if you will stand so that you can be sworn in.
And Madam Chair, if there are any folks who plan to testify on items 4 through 10, raise your hand on the Zoom call, and we'll swear you in at this time, swear everybody in all at once. And if anybody enters the Zoom later, we'll swear them in separately. So that'll help speed things up. So Janine, if you would let us know if somebody comes along and at the later dates. There are 2 people on the Zoom that also wish to be sworn in.
I'm assuming they haven't raised their hands yet, but I did ask them to unmute.
Okay,
They're
very
the
good.
owners for.
Very good. Subsequent procedures. So if you will, online, as well as the folks that are here right now, will all raise their hands, and then we'll start with Brian and
Somebody needs to take
state
this.
your name after I swear you in. If you would, state your full name, Brian.
Brian Thomas.
And next,
Um,
online, please.
Wendy Kinzer Maxwell. I do.
When you can, sir. Okay.
Um, Justin or Catherine, can you hear me and can you swear in now?
Hello, this is Justin Richardson.
Okay.
Is Catherine going to speak or just you?
I don't intend to speak.
Do you all swear or affirm, to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Everyone has been sworn. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. At this point for this item, any ex parte communication, Board Member Johnson? Board Member Conrad? I have done. Board Member Urchet? Okay, so now we can move into the staff overview for this.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The application before you is to amend the development order to establish a revised zoning ordinance for the Lexington Station mixed-use development to be called the Avalon Woods mixed-use development, excuse me, and to establish a development agreement. Let's go to the next slide. At the next one, we show a couple of main points that the applicant is requesting amendments to the development order, which is your ordinance that's before you and in your packet, and to establish a development agreement for Avalon Woods. And this is what you know as Lexington Station mixed-use development. The next point on that slide, that the development order amendments, this ordinance before you that includes the requirements for the development. The amendments that are being proposed are requesting overall an increase in the allowable residential density and also reduction in the non-residential densities or the square footage. And the development agreement itself is the additional agreement that is an attachment to your ordinance by reference, and it would be a separate agreement between the city and the applicant that would establish the duration of the agreement and the phasing plan and items that are specific to the development that are agreed upon between the city and the applicant as far as infrastructure. And on your next slide, just to give you an overall picture of the site that we're looking at, it stems around to the north and the south and to the east of the Easton Newberry Sports Complex, just south on the south side of Northwest 24th Avenue on the east side of State Road 45. The northern portion of the property is currently under development and the rest of it is undeveloped. And the next slide. Well, if we go back to the map, let's go ahead and that would be a good overview for that staff could have provided, and then to go ahead and go on to the applicant presentation. And then we can resume our presentation to give our recommendation.
Thank you very much. The applicant will step forward. Sorry about that.
Good evening. Thank you, Ms. Chair. Again, my name is Chris Potts. I'm the Director of Engineering for JB Pro, and here to present the request that we have in front of you today to amend the development order for a mixed-use development formerly known as Lexington Place. Our petition request is to amend the Lexington Place mixed-use development and as well as rename it to Avalon Woods. Just our presentation outline is to introduce the owner / developer, review some of our proposed amendments, and then go through some expert testimony. So the developer is M3 Development. As I'm sure everybody's aware, M3 has been here locally developing higher upscale residential developments in Newberry and throughout Florida in general. They're based out of Orlando. They're founded in 2005, and they specialize in residential developments. Some of the ones that we have here locally is Newberry Corners and Oak Park, as well as Avalon Woods Phase 1A and 1B, which 1A is currently under construction and 1B is going through the approval process. So just wanted to highlight some of the amendments as staff has already presented. We've submitted a revised conceptual master plan, which we identify as a bubble plan. It just gives some general locations of where we're proposing open space, residential, and since this is a mixed use development, we have some criteria that we have to meet as far as recreation and non-residential components. So our largest change, it's pretty significant, is the amendment as staff has already identified as one, the name. We like to request to change it to Avalon Woods, as well as density changes. We'd like to increase the single family residential from 214 units to 350. Increase the single family attached units from 106 to 150. And then increase the multifamily from 120 to 200 units, while decreasing the commercial or non-residential square footage from 329,000 roughly to 210,000. Additionally, as staff has mentioned, is we're working through a developer's agreement with the city staff to outline some infrastructure improvements that we've agreed to. One of them is improving the entrance into Easton Sports Complex. And as you can see, this is just a schematic of what we're thinking at the moment. Is a roundabout coming in. This entrance would serve two purposes. One, it would serve the mixed use development, but also serve the Easton Sports Complex for the city. And with it, we have some signage here, some exhibits of example signage that's proposed or in the concept phase for the development, as well as new signage for the city. We've been coordinating with city staff on these improvements, but this is the significant one that we've wanted to highlight this evening for you. Now it's time to just review some expert testimony. The developer himself, Mr. McDaniel, will run through some of the questions, and I will, as an expert testimony, will give the answers too.
So Chris just needed someone to ask the questions. So here I am. Number one, is water and sewer service from the city of Newberry available to serve the project?
Yes, it is. And as the city manager is presented with the wastewater capacity and concurrency, we have been in discussions with city staff as far as capacity and concurrency is working. And currently right now, there is capacity to serve the development.
Has the concept plan been designed to be sure to appropriate traffic connections designed into the right locations?
Yes, it has. We've not only have we worked with the city staff, but as well as FDOT, since that is State Road 45 is a roadway that's owned and maintained by FDOT. So we have coordinated with them, as well as worked on traffic analysis to provide those locations.
Has the design accommodated the city and state stormwater management needs?
Yes, it will. It will meet all state and local stormwater management facilities and the requirements for those.
Will the design provide buffers, open space, mixed uses to meet or exceed City of Newberry LDR requirements?
Yes, it has. The City of Newberry LDR requirements for mixed use has certain percentages as far as the minimum for non-residential, the maximum percentage that one use could have within a mixed use development, as well as open space, recreation, and passive areas.
Will final design have to be submitted to the City of Newberry, Swanee River Water Management District, FDOT, FDEP for design and permit approval?
Yes, it will. We will obtain all applicable permits. locally and from the state required as the project moves forward to construction.
Does SR 45 have capacity for additional trips?
So we performed, as part of this amendment, we've submitted a concurrency analysis for not only water and wastewater, but as well as trips and onto State Road 45. And actually, we are going to reduce the amount of traffic that State Road 45 will see as a result of this development because of the significant amount of non-residential square footage that has been reduced. That's where most of your traffic trips is generated, is from commercial uses, whether it's retail or office. So we have actually improved the capacity of State Road 45.
Has a traffic study been performed for the site?
Yes, it has. It's part of the justification for the amendment that we've provided to staff. And they have reviewed it and we've gone back and forth on it. So. That's it. Thanks, Dave. So just conclusions. All existing infrastructure is in place. As part of the phase 1A, we are constructing a wastewater lift station and extending water capacity to the site. As I mentioned earlier, we've performed a traffic analysis which shows we are reducing the trips to State Road 45, and the development itself meets all the mixed use requirements of the city's LDR. So we just request the Planning and Zoning Board to recommend approval. And if you have any questions, we'd be open to answer.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move to questions at a later time. We'll move to the staff presentation right now. Thank you.
So as Janine pulls up this PowerPoint for staff's presentation, as the applicant was discussing, there are specific requirements in the mixed use regulations that talk about a minimum 70. Let's say there's no single use that can be over 70% of the gross area, and then 5% minimum has to be used for commercial, and a minimum of 5% for commercial, for common open space, and a minimum of 5% for developed recreation, which these proposal as shown is they will meet all the different uses that are proposed will meet those requirements. As we went through with the developers describing that there were 214 units originally, being proposed for detached, and originally the, let's see, let me get that right. So originally 214 units, and that's being changed to 350 units being requested. And then again, with the single family attached, the 106 originally, and then the 150 units that are being requested, multifamily being 120 units going to 200 units. So overall, going to the next slide, you've got a change in 260 units. And then for the non-residential being proposed, it goes an overall decrease of 119,750 square feet overall. The next slide, the additional changes, just to go over the different things that are being requested and shown on your plan in that development order in your ordinance, that the minimum single family lot size being reduced from 5,500 to 4,000 square feet. There is an addition specifying that indoor and outdoor storage and mini warehouse uses would be permitted, which is a very important use these days. And that sidewalks be required only on one side of the street, and those are proposed by the developer. The next slide, to go over into the development agreement as being proposed as in your packet as an attachment to the ordinance. There are several things listed that are being requested there, including the 15 years being the duration of the agreement, and that there'd be 5 phases of development. The developer agrees to reimburse the city for the cost of the lift station generator, and to extend the 8-inch gravity sewer line to Easton Newberry Sports Complex, providing pedestrian access to Easton from Avalon Woods. And the city would agree to submit an application for a joint use stormwater facility that would be paid for by the developer. And the developer would be replacing an existing 4-inch force main with a 6-inch force main, with the city paying for upsizing. The next slide goes through some more of those items that are discussed in the development agreement about the lift station pumps being upsized as necessary, and developer contributing $40,000 toward new playground equipment at Easton. And it also specifies the timing for some of these different improvements that are being proposed in the development agreement as negotiated between the city and the developer, that the developer would reconstruct the driveway at Easton Newberry Sports Complex and meet city street standards, and to also install a 10-foot wide pedestrian bike path along the frontage up to 24th Avenue. And the next, the fences would be required around the perimeter of the property, such that those would be designed to be of uniform appearance, and that 2-story homes would have some design features that would, for the top half of the home that's showing the second floor, that be a little bit more decorative. The next slide gives you the proposed preliminary development plan that you also have in your packet, so you can view a little bit closer. And based on the information that's been provided by the applicant and their justification report and documentation provided, the application is considered to be consistent with the City of Newberry Comprehensive Plan. Staff finds, based on that determination, that we would recommend to the Planning and Zoning Board that you would recommend to the City Commission approval of the application. And I think there's one more point that shows you the staff recommendation. There you go. And staff is recommending that you would recommend approval to the City Commission. That concludes staff's report. If you have any other questions, or things you'd like to talk about, we're here. I'm happy to try to answer them.
Thank you very much. There is no third-party intervener, so we will move to public comment. We will be putting the screen up for you. There is the number to call in if you have comments on this item on the agenda. Please remember there's a 30-second delay between our in-person meeting and those watching on YouTube. So we're giving them ample time to call in and let us know if they have comments on this item. Once you get into the meeting, if you will press *9 to raise your hand to let us know you have a comment. And while we are doing that, I'm also going to ask Janine what date this will be heard from, if it is passed on to another meeting.
Principal planner, what day will you heard?
My understanding is it would be May 24th.
Is there any public comment? There is no public comment, so we will move to the applicant, who may cross-examine if they want to. Staff, would you like to cross-examine?
No, Madam Chair.
So we will move on to members of the board. Do you have questions for the staff, the applicant?
I have a question for staff. The change in the density, even though they're increasing the amount of permitted homes, you said that that's in line with our regulations, so that's not, that doesn't require any change to
No, no change to the
change the
density
length
requirements of the comprehensive
the higher
plan.
density. They're just shuffling the density around, and it's permitted currently.
Yes, it is.
My understanding of your question is that is correct.
did you not hear? I gave my answer as well, that would be correct, Commissioner. Are you hearing my response?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, all right. Just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Other board members, do you have questions for the staff, for the applicant? All right, so at this time, the final argument can be made by the applicant, who is telling me he has no final argument. The staff, if they have a final argument.
No final argument from staff.
If the city attorney will advise us on the applicable law, please.
Substantial and competent evidence from the podium, which will be the same for all of these procedures, and that the law allows opinion testimony from people like Brian and also the engineer and planner that spoke on behalf of the applicant. So that's the evidence that you'll need to take into account, and it'll be the same thing for the rest of the applications before us.
Thank you so much. If we can get a motion on the floor so we can deliberate.
Madam Chair, I recommend approval of ordinance 2021-14 to the city commission.
Is there a second?
I second.
We have a motion and a second on the motion. And are there deliberations by the board?
I do have something I want to discuss. On page 83 of the packet, and it was something that Wendy talked about briefly, but one change is going from retail to general commercial. And then I think as a side effect of that, allowing indoor and outdoor storage and mini warehouse uses on those commercial areas. I just want to think about, if someone were building a home and with the idea that it would be a commercial use next door or retail use next door, and then you get a mini warehouse next door instead, I prefer the first option. I think that, is there a reason why maybe that use is something they want to be able to include? I don't know if they can answer that question. Maybe should have asked it earlier, but.
When we did our analysis, if you remember how the property is, it butts up against a heavy industrial facility with an asphalt plant, concrete plant, and a lot of storage, outdoor storage. We felt that trying to put a traditional retail or even office right up against that would have been a severe negative to the market and to the use of the land. So we felt like the outdoor storage, mini storage would be a nice buffer that wasn't dramatically negatively impacted by the adjacent development. We do have a buffer, and we intend to landscape that buffer. So we'll put something that'll put a block, visual block between the homes and that activity.
Would there be a way to agreeably change the language in here that permits the outdoor and mini warehouse uses to not being something that faces the highway, so that it forces whatever other commercial uses there might be, whether it be retail, to be what is seen from the highway, and that the warehouse is not seen from the highway?
Yeah. I hate to put myself in a box, but the answer is obviously we're going to have highway frontage. That's where the value is. We're likely not going to put that sort of activity right on the highway, just because we can put it. Can we put the site plan back up so I can show you what I'm talking about? Yeah. So if you see on the right-hand side, that would be the southwest part of the property. It's actually broken into two rectangles. part of it showing in phase 3, part of it in phase 4. Yeah, that's it right there. If mini storage and if an outdoor storage happens, it'll be on the back 2/3 of the property or 1/3 of the property, depending on how much demand there is for those uses. The land on the frontage on the highway is likely going to be a higher quality retail and or office use. And we do have commercial right on the corner into the park, which hopefully we'll find a higher use retail user that'll want that location, and my children's children won't have to figure out how to sell it. So that's our intention is to put the mini storage, outdoor storage. Again, if it happens, we're still very much in the planning stages.
Sure.
Would be off of the highway and back, probably accessed off the business park next door.
Thank you.
Did I answer your question?
You did. Thank you. So in response to that, my preference would be that we delineate between maybe a light industrial use that is shown somewhere on the site plan and then a commercial retail use that is shown on the site plan, so that it requires that industrial use isn't taking up the highway frontage.
Madam Chair. Under the mixed use zoning category, light industrial is not a permitted use. And so a mini warehouse type facility or an outdoor storage would be about as intensive towards that as you could go.
So could we not default back to retail on a portion and then general commercial, and so in the same mindset that the general commercial is permitted in the back, which would permit warehouse, and retail is permitted in the front, which would not allow mini warehouse? Since we had retail in the first draft.
Madam Chair, it's certainly possible to make that change. I think that in the discussions I've had with the developer, they're just looking for the maximum flexibility. I mean, one of the reasons I think that possible reasons that the property has been on the market for so long is there was a much higher percentage of commercial required, and it's a less, I won't say less desirable, but it's, it's not Newberry Road, it's not State Road 26. And so in conversations with them, they're seeking the maximum flexibility to try to be able to find tenants so that it doesn't stay vacant, it doesn't go unutilized. So that was, I think the thinking, and staff was amenable to that based on those considerations.
Brian, what is the hesitancy? That seems like a fairly simple kind of thing to do, where you just simply delineate some percentage, some foot number back from the road and say this is retail, commercial, and the rest is, but you seem pretty hesitant. I mean, I just heard the developer say that's the intent. I think it's a pretty good idea.
Madam Chair, I don't, it's not so much hesitant, just I guess like the developer said, you hate to box people in too tightly, but certainly reserving the front for retail or office type uses, and then behind that, a little bit more intensive uses could certainly be written into the agreement or written into the development order.
Allow me to share one more time. I appreciate it. The property that is directly contiguous to the south of that is Top Shelf, which is effectively, it's a light industrial use. It doesn't look like a light industrial use because they have a nice showroom on the front, but immediately behind that there's warehouses, and nothing intrinsically wrong with what's there. Truthfully, that would likely be more of what we would do on the highway frontage and requiring aesthetic, kinds of things. I tend to fall back on. I really believe that the market is going to drive this, and we're not primarily commercial developers, but I am a guy who wants to make sure that you maximize value with the real estate, and the highway frontage. We're going to have a much higher price than the property in the back, and so I tend to think we're probably going to achieve the exact goal you're concerned with. As to whether we line it up, I think general commercial is the broad category. There is no retail or office zoning in Newberry, is that right?
That's correct. You've got, under the mixed use zoning district, you're allowed everything that's in general commercial and everything that's in commercial intensive.
You know what I'd be comfortable with is if we put a 200-foot buffer of no outdoor storage or mini storage within 200 feet of the highway. How's that? Would that fit to what you're trying to achieve?
I mean, I think my kind of the base of, the base of what I'm getting at is we've had a conversation a couple times of how the different corridors coming into the center of town are quickly being developed by metal industrial looking buildings. And so this is one development that we have an opportunity. There's gonna be a lot of homes here to drive retail, and this is a great spot for it. And, you know, we were pitched on the RV park across the street that all those folks want to shop in Newberry, and this is an opportunity to give those folks somewhere to shop. So I think that I like the idea of requiring that a portion of it is not what you look at and think, oh, that's an industrial building. You look at it and think, oh, that's an office complex or a retail complex. And the only reason I said retail is because that's how it was written in the first draft, and then it was struck through and called general commercial. But
well, that's just to accommodate to be conform to current LERs. Yeah, again, I'm comfortable offering up not having any outdoor storage within a certain distance from the highway. And if that would do the job, we'd be fine with that.
Madam Chair. I didn't hear the board member. I think he used the storage as an example,
right,
but it's not just the storage that
Sure.
is the concern. And I know that in our conversations internally, we have sort of looked at 26 and 27 and increasing the standards along those roads because we have so many people that want to develop now. It's a different world than it was 10 years ago. So what I'm hearing in this conversation is how do we ensure that right up against the road, that high market, and I agree with you, I think it's going to be driven by the market, but I also know markets fluctuate. And 5, 6, 7 years from now, when you're ready to do something, the market may be down. But storage units, just to use that as an example, are always an easy sell. So I think the idea here is how do we kind of accommodate this concern? And what I might suggest is, you know, we still have time in between here in the commission. Brian's listened to this conversation. You know, we could put this concern in the notes. We could say we really want to see something here. We could try to figure this out on the fly here, or we can say the P&Z, and we can put that in the motion that the P&Z wants to encourage staff to figure out how do we wordsmith this language so that we get to this idea of, and I don't know if 200 feet is the right number. That may be too much, may not be enough. I don't know, but I know that's the kind of in-depth conversation that it's going to be hard for us to have here tonight. But you and Brian could sit down, and Wendy could sit down and say, okay, we've clearly heard the P&Z wants to ensure a way that there is, I like the word retail because that gives me sort of an idea of what it's going to be. The P&Z wants to see retail right up against the road. How do we codify that in writing, not just accept it as that's the intent today? That would be kind of my suggestion.
It would be a combination probably on the front edge of retail and office. It's probably what we're
I think that's perfect. I just think something that looks like a more quality product than what maybe a self-storage building might look like to help create an attractive corridor.
Madam Chair, just a question. So are you concerned about the use or the architectural look,
I think,
or both?
I think both, but I think that the use is important because, you know, if we're talking about like the cabinet shop next door, you know, the likelihood that those folks are drawing in customers to their store, it's really a manufacturing place and a place that they use as an office. So I think what I would like to see is something that is used by customers and also looks nice to enter the city.
Yes, we can work with staff. One idea is we can just define it as general commercial area, which will have office, retail, etc. The commercial intensive is where you can have the light industrial components. So if we define it more of a general commercial, but we can work with staff to wordsmith that as Mayor Barlow suggested. So thank you.
Any other deliberations before we move to public comment from board members? Yes, sir.
Sure. I think rather than trying to build that into the motion or amend the motion to put what Gavin wants to put in there, that we could just put it in the minutes of the meeting that the city commission would see. And of course, we planted it, the seeds with Brian and Wendy, that's what the planning and zoning recommends. I think the city commission would probably go along with it too, but I think just leaving this part of the deliberations in the minutes would probably accomplish the goal that we want. That's okay. Yeah. I have a problem putting amendments in there because this session is more about the density. I mean, we're allowing them to change the density to more residential, less commercial. And we're really not in the specifics yet. I mean, we do have a preliminary master plan here, but that's subject to a lot of changes before we do a final development order. So I just hate to tie their hands. I mean, I want to plant this seed. I want this concept to be in front of the planners and the developers as they go through the process, but I don't want to say you.
Would you prefer something be in a motion or in the presentation that goes to the commission?
I'm indifferent. I'm whichever one you guys are comfortable with.
Madam Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
Janine pointed out that, the way the minutes are taken now, they don't include discussion. So that they don't go into a elaborate discussion.
There's some law that says they can.
Madam Chair.
There,
Oh. While she's deciding, I would say, one, that's the job of your liaison between the commission. And it's the job of the mayor to make sure that staff is, hey, did you hear those changes? Let's see what those things look like before they come to the commission. So even if they make it into the minutes or they don't make it into the minutes, I think we're going to have the same goal here at the end of the day. I've seen 5 people head nod. I think it's certainly better and cleaner to get it into the motion. That way it is. But I take Bill's point that I think we could just make the motion. Staff has heard it. The developer has said he's amenable to it. I think those changes will show up when it comes in front of the commission. So I think we can do either one here. It's just fine.
Madam Chair, I had one more comment as part of deliberations. We have the Newberry Star Park is right adjacent. It's on Easton property, but it's a club from Gainesville, and they chose this spot out here on Easton because it's real dark at night and away from the Gainesville city lighting, and they like the dark sky that we had out there. So, and they'll probably be here at meetings when we discuss the light pollution possibilities. But I know one of our other developers talked about using a dark sky standard where the lights along that side would be aimed at the ground instead of up at the sky and that kind of stuff. Are y'all familiar with the dark sky standards? Was it? I thought it was Jerry Dedenbach. Are you the one that told us about that, Dave? Yeah.
I don't think I was the one who discussed it, but I know that on the RV resort, we talked about using lights that didn't allow light to go upward and was
Right.
shot down.
Yeah.
I don't know about the dark sky standard, but I believe that that's something that we're already planning on doing in places.
Yeah.
And so we can certainly accommodate that. And when we get to the final development approvals for those various phases, that's certainly something we can talk about.
Okay, well, I just wanted you to be aware of the fact that the Newberry Star Club is right across the fence from you.
I saw that. It's kind of neat.
Be nice to them, yeah. Okay.
I just want to make sure that if we're sending forward a motion to approve the changes as written, will that not negate the conversation that we're having that we want to take out one of the changes that is written?
I mean, personally, I think unless we ensure that that's what we want going forward, it does kind of negate. I think staff does try to relay in the presentations what we discussed many times, but sometimes it gets lost, especially if there's a lot of time between meetings. And so that's why I asked, how do you want it to go forward?
I mean, my preference to vote yes on a motion would be to think of a way to change the language in that section, but
Madam Chair. Well, I can't remember who made the motion. Did you make the motion? And who seconded the motion? So we'd have to get the maker of the motion and the seconder to amend, or we could vote on this now and see if it passes or fails. We're down one board member, so it may fail 2-2, or may pass the way it is. I think the only time that we do move things forward without necessarily changing the motion is when we don't exactly know what the wording needs to be. And we're telling staff, you got to go back and kind of figure out exactly, because we don't want to make the motion so specific that it kind of pigeonholes them. But I think the amendment would be pretty easy, right? The maker of the motion would simply say, staff, I still support my motion with the amendment that staff make the additions that we have discussed here today. And now that's codified in the motion. Now you'll see what those amendments are, and then the seconder of the motion would either accept that amendment or not. Scott, is that?
That's exactly what I was going to suggest. Direct staff to make the amendments, to work with the developer to make the amendments before it gets to city commission. So that's exactly my suggestion.
We don't have to amend.
You would have to amend
We have to amend it.
what you, yeah.
All you have to do is amend your motion. So I make my motion with the following amendment that staff will work to change the language to align with the conversation that we've had here today. That would be the only amendment to the motion.
And Naeem, do you accept the amendment?
There you go.
Are there any other deliberations from the board before we go to public comment? Actually, we can put up, Gavin, did you have something? Okay. We can put up the screen for public comment. For the number to call in if you have comment on the motion that's before the board. There's a number to dial in. There is a 30-second delay between the meeting and what you are seeing on YouTube. So if you have comments on this motion, you will call the number on your screen and you will press *9 to raise your hand to let us know that you have a comment on this motion. We are going to give you 30 seconds to dial in which time I am also going to add my standard deliberation of it is not going to affect my vote any, but I am concerned about how full our schools are and the amount of residential we are adding to Newberry. There's no public comment, so we will go to a vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion passes 4-0. We will move on to our next quasi judicial hearing. And we will have our city attorney read the ordinance into the record.
Madam Chair, I will read each one of these ordinances as was noted when we were approving the agenda this evening. Each one of these matters are essentially the same, changing from county rural agriculture to city agriculture. My recommendation, I'll read it in, as we normally would. And we've already said, unless there's somebody new coming into this meeting, we're not going to go through the procedures again. And Wendy, I don't know if you'll be presenting on these or Brian, but my recommendation is to abbreviate, Wendy, the procedure. You can say my staff report is as provided, and you don't have to go through the same presentation each time, and that'll move us along pretty quickly. There you go, exactly. So that the 147 pages that is in the staff report is your opinion, and that will move the matter ahead, and we won't have to go through the same laborious thing over and over and over. Now, if somebody online wishes us to stop and explain something or ask staff questions, that sort of thing, then we're going to ask you, the person that is online, to raise your hand and let us know that, and we'll go through any questions you have or go in further detail into the presentation. So that can be our plan for this evening. And Madam Chair, what I'll do is go ahead and read you now the next item, which is ordinance number 2021-17 CPA 21-05, an ordinance of the city of Newberry, Florida, amending ordinance number 4-91 as amended, relating to the amendment of future land use plan map of the city of Newberry comprehensive plan under the expedited amendment procedures established in sections 163.31842 and 3 Florida statutes, and in conformance with the sections 163.3161 through 163.3215 of the Florida statutes, providing for a change in future land use classification from Alachua County rural agriculture less than or equal to 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres to city of Newberry agriculture less than or equal to 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres on certain lands within the corporate limits of the city of Newberry, Florida, which have been annexed thereto, tax parcel number 02610-000-000, consisting of approximately 19.4 contiguous acres, providing servability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date. The appropriate motion will be to pass ordinance number 2021-17 as read by title only.
Thank you very much. Does the board have any ex parte communication regarding this item? Seeing none. Yes, sir, you had a question? I'm still gonna ask, sorry. So now we can go to the staff presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On this first application, CPA 2105, next slide will show you the overall process. Just briefly, that once the properties were annexed, these are several properties that you'll see tonight. In 2020, they were annexed, and this is the first part of changing the future land use map. The next slide shows you the location of the property, that it is on the east side of Southwest 250th Street, approximately 0.62 miles south of Southwest 46th Avenue. The next slide shows you the change in the land use map, going from county rural agriculture to city of Newberry agriculture. This is for 19.4 acres. Next slide, the recommendation of staff is for the Planning and Zoning Board to recommend to the City Commission approval. And that concludes staff's report.
Does the board have any questions for staff? Wendy, do you have a final argument?
No, ma'am. The planning staff report is entered into the record.
And will the city attorney advise us? Oh, you already advised us on all of that.
They did.
So can I entertain a motion on this item?
Chair recommends approval of CPA 2105.
Second.
Any deliberation on this item? We will go to public comment at this time. We are putting up the screen for you to call in on this item, which is a change from the county agricultural to the city of Newberry agricultural on this plot of land. There's a number to call in on your screen. there's a 30-second delay between our in-person meeting and what you are seeing on YouTube. So you may call in if you have comments on the motion before the board at this time. Press *9 to raise your hand to let us know you have comments on this item. There are no public comments at this time. So all in favor of this motion, please say aye. Any opposed? And the motion passes 4-0, which will lead us to our next quasi judicial hearing, which Attorney Walker will read into the record.
Madam Chair, ordinance number 2021-17, CPA 21-05, an ordinance of the city of Newberry, Florida, amending ordinance numbers 4-91 as amended relating to an amendment of future land use plan map of the city of Newberry comprehensive plan under the expedited amendment procedures established in sections 163.31842 and 3 Florida statutes, and in conformance with sections 163.3161 through 163.3215 of the Florida statutes, providing for a change in future land use classification from agriculture, Alachua County rural agricultural, less than or equal to 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres, to city of Newberry agriculture, less than or equal to 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres, on certain lands within the corporate limits of the city of Newberry, Florida.
Is this the LGR 2150?
Oh, I have this 2117. I'm sorry.
Right.
My numbers are out of order. My bad. Let me find it. No, 15. Goodness. Okay. How this has gotten so confused on my electronic here. Let me see if I can go back. Hold on. Sorry, here we were moving along so well. Brian, do you have it in front of you in hard copy, or do you need it?
Looks like my package. 15.
Okay.
If it's acceptable, I mean, I can read it into the record.
2105 was the first one. It was item number 5.
Do you have that one?
It should be ordinance 2021-20
You like?
or LDR 21-15. I have it in front of me.
Okay. So if you want to read it, I don't have any objection to that.
Okay.
Might move us ahead a little quicker.
LDR
Thank you.
2115 is an application by the city of Newberry to amend the Fisher zoning atlas of the city of Newberry by changing the zoning from Alachua County agriculture to city of Newberry agriculture on property presently annexed in the city of Newberry, identified Alachua County parcel number 026-02610-000-000, contingent upon the approval of application 2105. Changing the previously annexed properties, future land use map classification from Alachua County Rural Ag to City of Newberry Rural Ag. Guess I got to read all of it. Quasi judicial public hearing, CPA 2106, an application by the City of Newberry to, that, okay.
So now, are there any ex parte communications on this item?
No.
Okay, we're ready for your presentation.
This is the second part of the process. After changing future land use map, then you need to change the zoning from county to city classifications to come into compliance with the city's regulations. And the next slide shows you the location of the property that you saw previously. And the next slide after this will give you the recommendation of staff to the city, to the Planning and Zoning Board, that you recommend to the City Commission approval of the draft ordinance 2021-20 on application LDR 21-15, contingent upon the City Commission's approval of CPA 21-05.
Does the board have any questions for staff? At this point, I will, we've been advised what our the applicable law and factual findings will be. So at this point, I'll entertain a motion.
Recommend approval of LDR 21-15 contingent upon the approval of CPA 2106.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any deliberation by the board on this item? We will move to public comment. On your screen, you will see the number to call in on this item. There's the number. If you have comments on this item, you can call into the number on your screen. There's a 30-second delay between our meeting and what you're seeing on YouTube. Once you call into the meeting, you can press *9 to raise your hand to let us know that you have a comment on this item on the agenda. Has anyone new entered the meetings at all? Okay. There is no public comment. All in favor of this motion, say aye. Any opposed? And the motion passes 4-0. Moving on to item number 7, we will have our city attorney read this into the record.
Okay, this is our CPA 21-06, and this is ordinance number 2021-18, an ordinance of the City of Newberry, Florida, amending ordinance number 4-91 as amended, relating to amendment of future land use plan map for City of Newberry Comprehensive Plan under the expedited amendment procedures established in sections 163.3184, 2 and 3 Florida statutes, in conformance with sections 163.3161 through 163.3215 Florida statutes, providing for a change in future land use classification from Alachua County Rural Agricultural, less than or equal to 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres, to City of Newberry Agriculture, less than or equal to 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres, on certain lands within the corporate limits of the City of Newberry, Florida, which have been annexed thereto, tax parcels number 01926-005-000 and 01926-010-015, consisting of approximately 13.7 contiguous acres, provided severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date. The appropriate motion is to pass ordinance 2021-18 as read by title only.
Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm betting you're glad right now that you only have to read these by title only. Is there any ex parte communication on this item from members of the board? Seeing none, we will move to Wendy for her presentation on this item.
And this is the comprehensive plan amendment part where you change the future land use map designation from county to city on property that's recently annexed. The next slide shows you the location of that property. It's on the north side of Southwest 15th Avenue, about 0.4 miles east of Southwest 226th Street, owned by the Hodges. There are 2 parcels there totaling 13.7 acres. And the next slide will show you the recommendation that the Planning and Zoning Board would recommend to the City Commission approval of ordinance 2021-18 for CPA 21-06.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions on this item? If not, is there a motion? Is there a second? We have a motion and a second on the floor for this item. Is there any deliberation by the board? Seeing none, we are moving to public comment. Once again, the number is on your screen to call in if you have comments on this item before the board. You can dial into the number. And if you have a comment, you can press *9 to raise your hand to let us know you have a comment on this item, so we can get your comment in the meeting. There's a 30-second delay between YouTube and the in-person meeting. And I'm seeing that we have 0 public comment. So all in favor of the motion on the floor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion passes 4-0. Moving on to number 8. Our city attorney will read this into the record.
Yes, Madam Chair, this is LDR 21-16, ordinance number 2021-21, an ordinance of the city of Newberry, Florida, relating to the amendment of the official zoning atlas for the rezoning of less than 5% of the total land area of the city pursuant to an application by the city of Newberry, amending the official zoning atlas of the city of Newberry land development regulations, providing for rezoning from the Alachua County Agriculture A zoning district to the city of Newberry Agricultural A zoning district on certain lands within the corporate limits of the city of Newberry, Florida, which have been annexed thereto, tax parcels 011926-005-000 and tax parcel number 01926-010-015, consisting of approximately 13.7 contiguous acres, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date. The appropriate motion is to pass ordinance number 2021-21 as read by title only.
Thank you very much. Is there any ex parte communication on this item? Seeing none, if the staff will present their presentation.
Madam Chair, this application is for the same property that we just saw on the maps previously for the plan amendment. This would change the zoning from county to city agriculture. The next slide shows you the location again. And we keep going through. The staff recommendation is for the Planning and Zoning Board to recommend to the City Commission approval of the ordinance 2021-21, and that's for application LDR 21-16, and that would be contingent upon the City Commission's approval of CPA 2106.
So moved.
I have a motion and second on the floor for this. Is there any deliberation by the board? We're putting up the screen for public comment. The number on your screen is the number to call in if you have questions or comments about this item that is before the board. You may call in and press *9 to raise your hand to let us know that you have a comment on this item. There's a 30-second delay between our meeting and what you are seeing on YouTube, so we're giving you time to call in to let us know if you have a comment.
And Janine, no new persons have entered the Zoom.
Correct.
Seeing that there is 0 public comment, all in favor of the motion on the floor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion passes 4-0, and we will move to item number 9, which our city attorney will read into the record for us.
CPA 21-07. This is ordinance number 2021-19. An ordinance of the city of Newberry, Florida, amending ordinance number 4-91 as amended, relating to an amendment of the future land use plan map of the city of Newberry comprehensive plan under the expedited amendment procedures as established in sections 163.3184, 2 and 3 of the Florida statutes in conformance with sections 163.3161 through 163.3215 of the Florida statutes, providing for a change in future land use classification from Alachua County rural agriculture less than or equal to 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres, to City of Newberry agriculture, less than or equal to 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres, on certain lands within the corporate limits of the City of Newberry, Florida, which have been annexed thereto. Tax parcel number 04270-000-000, consisting of approximately 80.87 contiguous acres, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date. The appropriate motion is to pass ordinance number 2021-19 as read by title only.
Thank you very much. Is there any ex parte communication on this item? Seeing none, we'll move to the staff presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is the third group of applications. This is to change the future land use map for another property that's over 10 acres in size. Note that this is another large-scale amendment that will go to the Department of Economic Opportunity for their expedited review process once it goes from the City Commission on first reading if they choose to approve. The next slide shows you the location of the property. And it is 80.87 acres, changing from Alachua County land use to the city's land use for agriculture. And it is located on the east side of Dudley Farm Historic State Park. This is about a half-mile north of State Road 26 and about 1.3 miles east of Northwest 202nd Street. The staff recommendation is to approve, recommend to the City Commission approval of ordinance 2021-19 for CPA 21-07.
Thank you very much. We have a motion on the floor and a second. Are there any comments from the board on the motion as we move to public comment? The number is up on your screen. If you have a question or a comment concerning the motion that is currently before the board, you may call into the number, and once you get into the meeting, you can press *9 to raise your hand to let us know that you have a comment or a question. There's a 30-second delay between our in-person meeting and what you see on YouTube, so we're giving people ample time to call in. Seeing zero public comment, all in favor of this motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion passes 4-0, which will lead us to our final quasi-judicial ordinance that our city attorney will read into the record for us.
Madam Chair, this is LDR 21-17, ordinance number 2021-22, an ordinance of the City of Newberry, Florida, relating to amendment of the official zoning atlas of the rezoning of less than 5% of the total land area of the city pursuant to an application by the City of Newberry, amending the official zoning atlas of the City of Newberry land development regulations, providing for rezoning from Alachua County Agriculture A zoning district to the City of Newberry Agricultural A zoning district on certain lands within the corporate limits of the City of Newberry, Florida, which have been annexed thereto. Tax parcel number 04270-000-000, consisting of approximately 80.87 acres, contiguous acres of land, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date. Appropriate motion is to pass ordinance number 2021-22 as read by title only. And Wendy, I want to compliment you. You've done a great job of summarizing these and getting the appropriate information into the record. So good job. Thank you. And thank you. Thank you.
Is there any ex parte communication on this item?
No.
Seeing none, we will move to Wendy for her presentation on this item.
And this is the application that's the property that you just saw, to change the zoning from county to city agriculture. The next slide again shows you the location of the 80.87 acres by Dudley Farm. Next slide is the change in zoning, and the next slide provides the staff recommendation that you would recommend to the City Commission approval of the draft ordinance 2021-22 and application LDR 21-17. Note that this is contingent upon the City Commission's approval of CPA 21-07.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I have a motion and a second while I'm talking at the same time, which is great. So are there any comments or questions from the board as we move into public comment?
They've just done such a fabulous job that we just want to move on.
Who voted to present?
Naeem motion.
Second. Thank you, staff.
So very soon, the number will be up on your screen to call if you have a comment on the motion before the board. You may call into the number on your screen, and once you get in, you can press *9 to raise your hand to let us know you have a comment or a question or concern about this item. There's a 30-second delay between our in-person meeting and what you are seeing on YouTube, so we are giving you plenty of time to comment in. We do have a public comment, I believe.
We have a third attendee who raised his hand and is now gone. Came in, raised his hand, left.
So we will give them very short few seconds to let them see if they get back in. I will note that we were concerned about the time crunch this would put us under, but I believe we handled all 6 of these within 20 minutes, which is not bad.
Has not come back.
Okay, seeing no public comment, all in favor of this motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion passes 4-0, which moves us, thank you very much, all of you, to topics from members for discussion. Board Member Johnson.
I do. I've been on Zoom for the last year of these meetings, and I wanted to say thank you to staff. You guys have done such a good job coordinating everyone, and I've been on Zoom for work all day, and you guys do a top-notch job. So
You're here.
I absolutely agree with that. I'm on Zoom a lot myself, and yes. Board Member Conrad.
Just my appreciation, Madam Chair, for getting us through this. I hate to seem impatient about it, but I'm getting old and this is past my bedtime. So I appreciate you're getting us through this in 20 minutes. I think it was done professionally and you did a good job.
As my 10-year-old would say right now, but it's still light out. How is it bedtime?
You'll be old one day yourself.
Board Member Urchet.
Thanks to staff for making this easier. And I just want to send out a reminder that the Watermelon Festival is coming up. And you can get your gear at Capital City or Joel's Coffee House and join us in mid-May for the parade.
City Attorney.
Well, I advise my clients when we're going to court that as judges get older, male or female, they want you to stay focused and they want you to get to where it is you need to be in a hurry. And so I think, Bill, that's a natural way things of progression. And it's just, you get less tolerant of all that jazz. And so staying focused is a very good thing.
Mayor Marlowe.
I only wanted to say that at in the comments of the last commission meeting, we did have a conversation about how much longer these hybrid meetings would be continuing. And it seemed like the commission was going to rescind the executive order, the emergency order that allows us to have these hybrid meetings at the end of this month. So it looks like you guys have voluntarily started to come back live before that happens anyway. We don't know how that conversation is going to go. I just want to let everyone know that that was the topic of conversation.
Governor did it for us today.
But as Dallas told me, our hybrid meetings are by Newberry's resolution. And so, and they do not infringe on anyone's civil liberties, which is what the governor's order pinpointed on. So our executive or our emergency order that allows the hybrid meetings will still have to be rescinded or extended. That's all my comments, Madam Chair.
Okay, go ahead.
I just want to send a big congratulations to our Newberry Panthers baseball team on winning districts, and I believe they're going to regionals this Friday. So upward motion for and cheerleading. And track. Newberry is in the upward momentum as our population grows.
Hey, you didn't say anything when tennis made it to districts. Second day,
haven't-
it's fine. It's fine.
I didn't know we had a tennis team.
And so my comment is that this is my 25th month of being chair of these meetings. And I was looking over our LDRs today. And I think that's out of compliance with our LDRs. Oh, we're not okay. So I'm just perhaps, I mean, it's such a great job to chair these meetings. It's not nerve-wracking at all. So perhaps next time we could discuss having somebody share that burden for the next 12 months. If there are no other topics, this meeting is adjourned.
Yeah.